Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video, and today guys we're going to be covering a rather interesting topic, which is which combat Space Marine chapter should you pick, Blood Angels or Black Templars? Now I know there are other combat chapters out there such as White Scars and Space Wolves, but whenever you come across this question on forums, it is one that is posted constantly on Black Templar, Blood Angel, mixed forums, places like Reddit, Bolt and Chainsaw, Daka. You always seem to see these two chapters being picked, or being asked about. Do I want Blood Angels or Black Templars? And I think it's because these two are probably the most common combat chapters, or at the very least, the most well-known combat chapters for Space Marines. Now, what's interesting is 9 times out of 10, you will see someone post Blood Angels. Blood Angels are just better, flat out. They're the ones you want to go for. Black Templars, unfortunately, aren't as good as Blood Angels. Now, what's interesting is I don't actually think that is correct. I think at face value, or on paper, it might seem like Blood Angels are just far and away better than Black Templars. But what's interesting is that whenever my Black Templars go up against my brother's Blood Angels, the armies are extremely well matched. And actually, the Black Templars have probably overall got more wins in against the Blood Angels. Now, if Blood Angels are so much better than Black Templars, that then how come that is the case? So what I want to do, guys, is actually scratch a little bit below the surface. I don't just want to take things at face value. And I'm going to explain why I believe that Black Templars are equally as powerful as Blood Angels, but they do play slightly differently. So we're going to go into that today, and hopefully by the end of this video some of you will be a bit more convinced that you can pick one or the other. It may actually just depend on what your preferred playstyle is. Now, first thing first, let's take a look at the respective chapter tactics for these chapters. And we'll go through the Blood Angels first. Now, the Blood Angels do have a smorgasbord of special rules, but the first one we're going to look at is the Red Thirst. Now, the Red Thirst is an absolutely fantastic chapter tactic, probably one of the stronger ones, to be honest. And on face value, it does seem like it's just far and away better than the Black Templar one. So, what it allows you to do is get plus on the turn that you were charged, or make a heroic intervention, you get to add +1 to the wound rolls in the fight phase. In addition, now thanks to Psychic Awakening, and they've had a bit of a boost to their tactic, you also get to add 1 to the advance and charge rolls. So that's really, really good. You also have the unique Blood Angels combat doctrine, which is Savage Echoes. And this is basically like having a super chapter tactic that all chapters got with Psychic Awakening and various supplements. And the one for Blood Angels is called Savage Echoes. And while the Assault Doctrine is active, you get to add 1 to the attacks of models that were charged, or heroically intervened. And that does stack with Shock Assault. Now that is really, really good. And overall, the pure combat power that a Blood Angel army is able to put out is extremely powerful. Now let's stack that up against the Black Templar chapter tactic, which is called Righteous Zeal. Units with this tactic can re-roll failed charge rolls, either 1 or both dice, and they also get a 5+ feel no pain versus mortal wounds. Now that is really, really good, but it's not quite as raw combat power damage output that the Blood Angels have, let's be honest. I mean, they get +1 to wound. That means when they get into combat, they tear things apart. But the Black Templars are more likely to get into combat, because they just have the ability to reroll failed charge rolls. And one thing that has come up time and time again when me and my brother's Templars, my Templars and my brother's Blood Angels face off against each other, is you can have all the combat power in the world, but if you don't make it into combat, it doesn't mean anything. And especially when Blood Angels like to deep strike out of combat. I know they can get +1 to charge now, so it's an 8-inch charge rather than a 9-inch, and they do have other things they can stack on it. But Black Templars also have plenty of options that allow them to get additions to their charge rolls. And they, on top of that, get to reroll failed charge rolls. So it is really good. It isn't to be underestimated. The 5+ feel no pain versus mortal wounds. Now it's very important that you realise that's not just from psychic powers. That's any mortal wounds, even things from snipers, stuff like that. Even when you have company veterans and you want to pass off some wounds to a character, that's a mortal wound. Your company veterans can survive that. So it's good. It doesn't have quite the raw damage output, but it does increase reliability and it does have versatility, and that's something we're going to get back to later on in the video. Now, the super combat doctrine for the Black Templars is called Knights of Sigismund, and when the assault doctrine is active, units that charge or heroically intervene against non-vehicle units that roll an unmodified 6 to hit in melee, auto hit and auto wound. Now that is really good, because it's not, but it is, I will be honest, it's probably not quite as good as the flat ability that the Blood Angels have to get more attacks. You know, Savage Echo is more attacks in Assault Doctrine, that's true. But it is still a nice bonus to have. And coming from someone who has run Combat Templars a lot and has faced them against multiple different armies, one of the big things that I have found that Marines can struggle with, I know, is the fact that you can get all the hits, but sometimes you can struggle to wound. Now, Blood Angels get +1 to wound, that's great. But you know what's better than +1 to wound? Auto wounding. So I would, however, I'm not going to dress it up, I would say probably overall the Blood Angel combat doctrine Savage Echoes is better than Knights of Sigismund. But Knights of Sigismund is one of those ones that you don't think it's that good on paper, and then when you have it and you're using it and then you're facing someone who's using Blood Angels, and you're just rolling loads of 6s and they're all auto wounding, you start to love it. And Johnny, who's my brother, who's one of my regular opponents, he has his Blood Angels. He has his own channel, Schola Progenium. Go and check it out. He will tell you that one of the most frustrating things is when you get a good amount of hits, but even as Blood Angels, your dice fluff it, and you get a lot of 1s and 2s to wound, and then suddenly that Knights of Sigismund starts looking really good because it takes out the randomness. Okay, so in terms of so when we're comparing these two combat doctrines, looking at them on paper, you would think, right, pure raw damage output, the Blood Angels have got it in the bag, and I wouldn't deny that. But in terms of reliability, in terms of versatility, the Templars kind of win out. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in just a moment. So one of the things that I should mention as well is that the Black Templars' Righteous Zeal combat doctrine has kind of got a bit of a shadow buff from the way that 9th edition has changed the command reroll stratagem. So previously, when you were able to spend 1 command point and you could reroll 1 of the dice for charge distance. Now, in 9th edition, you have to reroll both dice. And even in the couple of games that I've played already, it has come up where the opponent has failed a charge roll, but they've got like a 6 on one dice and a 1 on the other dice, and they only really want to reroll one of them, but they're forced to reroll both. Well, guess what? Black Templars, thanks to their inbuilt chats tactic, if you get that 6 and a 1, Righteous Zeal lets you pick whether you want to reroll one or both of those dice. So you actually have greater versatility now, and that is really, really powerful. And there are abilities in the Blood Angel Codex which allows them to reroll the charge distance, but again, it tends to be you have to reroll the full thing. So what we're looking at here is you start to see the trend here where the Blood Angels do have that raw combat output, but the Black Templars have that reliability. And it's kind of like, you know, you've got the raw, savage, berserker combat ability of the Blood Angels versus the more finesse, way of the sword, blade, almost like samurai-like, knight-like, martial skill of the Templars. One is pure brutality, and one is a bit more skill with the blade. Now what's really interesting is the Black Templars actually have some support characters which are really good and allow them to mimic a lot of the abilities that the Blood Angels have. So for example, you've got High Marshal Helbrecht. He is essentially the chapter master of the Black Templars. Now, he's an absolute combat beast, he's a chapter master. I'm not going to go through his stats now. I'm actually going to look at one of his abilities, which is Crusade of Wrath. And this is add 1 to the strength characteristics of Black Templars whilst they're within 6 inches of this model. Now, +1 strength is a really interesting thing when it comes to Marines because it makes you strength 5. And strength 5 is kind of the sweet spot of the wounding mechanic in 8th and now 9th edition. Because strength 5 means that you'll pretty much be wounding anything in the game on a minimum of 5s. And you'll never wound anything, and be also wounding other Marines on 3s. And if you stack that up against Blood Angels, and when you think about it, comparing these two factions to each other is really good because Marines are the sort of top meta at the moment, and so competitively you're going to face a lot of Marines, right? So Blood Angels, if they come across something like a Repulsor, which is toughness 8, then when they charge it, they're strength 4, but they get +1 to wound, so they wound it on 5s. Well, guess what? Black Templars in range of Helbrecht are strength 5, which means they wound that Repulsor on 5s as well. Then you think, well, what about, you know, Marine on Marine combat, intercessors versus intercessors? Well, the Black Templars are strength 5, which means they wound the Marines who are toughness 4 on 3s. And then the Blood Angels get +1 to wound, but they're only strength 4, so they also wound the Black Templars back on 3s. So what's interesting is that +1 to wound thing that everyone loves about the Blood Angels so much, you can kind of recreate that with High Marshal Helbrecht for the Black Templars. Now obviously when you start looking at things like Thunderhammers on Blood Angels, then they can start wounding lots of stuff on 2s and 3s. You know, a Blood Angel Smash Captain with a Thunderhammer, he's looking at wounding, you know, he's going to be wounding things on 3s. But, you know, likewise, so will the Black Templar guy with the Thunderhammer, because he's going to be strength 8, then you add the +1, makes him strength 9, he's wounding knights on 3s too. So, I will say now that that strength 5 isn't quite as good as +1 to wound, because if you come across infantry which are toughness 3, then the Black Templars are still only like Light Guardsmen, which are a very common chaff unit. Then the Blood Angels will tear through those chaff units, wounding them on 2s, and the Black Templars still be only wounding them on 3s. But what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that the Black Templars, they can kind of keep up with the Blood Angels with some of their special abilities. Now obviously Blood Angels get extra attacks in combat as well. Now, what's interesting is the Black Templars can kind of use another support character in the form of Chaplain Grimaldus to get extra attacks as well. So he has an ability called Unmatched Zeal, which basically gives Black Templar units within 6 inches of Grimaldus exploding 6s in combat. So whilst the Blood Angels might get, you know, just +1 attack, the Black Templars, which is, you know, that is really good. Again, the Black Templars can get more attacks because they will have exploding 6s, and it's, you know, it's an unmodified 6 to hit. So it means that whether someone's got negatives to hit, like you've got power fists and stuff like that, it's always going off. It's really good. So, and like I said, I would say again, having +1 attack is good because it's reliable and you may not get any 6s. The exploding 6 is totally true. But what I'm demonstrating here is that Black Templars have the ability to generate additional attacks, like Blood Angels. Black Templars have the ability to get modifiers to wound in form of strength 5, like Blood Angels. But on top of that, we also have reroll in our charge distances. We also have auto wounding on 6s. We also have 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds. So we're able to, against the most sort of common tournament matchup, you know, Marine versus Marine, we're able to mimic the Blood Angels in terms of strength and extra attacks, but we also get our reliability. And the thing is with Black Templars is that you're always going to want to take Grimaldus and Helbrecht. You're not having to sort of take your list in a direction you don't want to and take units and things that you wouldn't want to, because Helbrecht and Grimaldus are two of the best characters you can take. That they are auto includes, and they're really, really, really good. And they're no slouches in combat, because as Templars, every Marine army wants chapter masters. You get a chapter. You have a pretty well pointed, pretty well-prized chapter master, and you also want access to a chaplain because you want access to litanies. Now, speaking of litanies, I know the Blood Angels get access to a spell which gives them access to +1 attack. Well, the Black Templars have a litany which allows them to do the same thing. I'm just going to find it now. I don't want to say the wrong one. So it's called, I think it's Fires of Devotion. I'll just double check. Yeah, so Fires of Devotion, Black Templar unit, if it charges or Heroic Intervention, guess what? +1 attack characteristic. That's really good. So again, we have ways Blood Angels can get psychic powers to give them +1 attack. Black Templars have got litanies. Psychic powers can be denied. Litanies can't be denied. And what's interesting is Chaplain Grimaldus, because he is a Master of Sanctity, he allows you to re-roll the dice for trying to get a litany off. So again, that reliability comes into it. He's dirt cheap. It's like 100 points, Chaplain Grimaldus. He's really, really worth it. So you can see we're kind of mimicking the buffs of the Blood Angels. Now there is one small buff that I haven't mentioned, which is the Crusader squad for the Black Templars. Now the Crusader squad is the unique combat unit of the Black Templars, and comparing it to, for example, Death Company. Now Death Company, straight up, they will rip and tear through anything, get another +1 attack because of Black Rage. But Crusader squads are, again, a little bit more versatile. They can be taken in 20-man blobs, or they can be taken in 5-man blobs. You can mix and match. They're also, point for point, significantly cheaper than Death Company, because you're only paying for tactical marine prices, but you can also bring the cost of the unit down by taking some meat shields in the form of neophytes, which are basically, with Black Templars, you can mix. You can take a unit of tactical marine equivalents and a unit of scouts in the same squad. So you can take 5 to 10 what are called initiates, which are power armored bodies, and you can take 0 to 10 scout bodies, neophytes, which they're cheaper. So if you take a mixture of 5 and 5 initiates and neophytes, it actually ends up working out that you're paying 1 point less per model. So you're actually, instead of paying like under the current new rules, I think it's 15 points tactical marine, it's actually only 14 points per model, because one is 13 points and one is 15 points. So that's really good. So their budget. Also, they're troops, so they're able to get OBSEC. Also, they will take special weapons, and you can take a combi weapon on the sergeant. So Death Company, yeah, they've got that raw combat potential, but you can take a power sword on the sword brother in a Crusader squad. You can take another power sword in there, or a heavy weapon, and then you can take a combi plasma on the sergeant, and you can take a plasma gun in the Black Templar unit. They also have a rule called pair combatants, where if you've got an equal number of initiates to neophytes, then you have, when you're in melee, you get to re-roll ones. Now, obviously, most of the time you're going to be in range of some sort of captain, or you're going to be in range of Helbrecht, but it does mean that if you're not in range of those units, you still have a source of re-rolls, just inherently in the unit, and that's good. It means you don't have to babysit them as much. They're not as reliant on necessarily on characters. You can just let these eat, and when you get into the end of the game, when some of your characters may have been picked off, your Templars are still getting some rerolls, which is really, really nice, really powerful. In fact, if you go and watch the last couple of battle reports on Johnny's channel, Schola Progenium, with my Black Templar versus his Blood Angels, even when he has killed my characters like Helbrecht, my army is still getting rerolls from one source or another, and often that is from paired combatants. A lot of people overlook it, but it shouldn't be underestimated. It is actually a really nice redundancy ability to have. Now, I actually forgot to mention this earlier, but it's regarding High Marshal Helbrecht, and I want to say this before we go on to the next part of the video, and it's to do with that ability for the Black Templars to mimic the Blood Angels and a couple of things. So we mentioned how Marshal Helbrecht gives everyone +1 strength, which is similar to the +1 to wound of the Blood Angels. I also want to point out that his Warlord trait is a really good one. In fact, it's actually the best Black Templar Warlord trait, which is called Forward Commander. And what it basically does is everyone around him gets +1 to advance and +1 to charge, just like the Blood Angels' Red Thirst ability. So High Marshal Helbrecht basically is kind of like a bit of a Blood Angel's doppelganger or something. He's obviously seen what they do. It's like, I want to give my guys some better strength ability, and I want to give my guys the ability to get +1 and advance and charge. So if you actually add it all up, not only do the Black Templars have, the ability to get extra 6s from their, extra attacks from their combat characters, they also have that ability to basically, from Helbrecht, get the Blood Angel chapter tactic with the +1 strength and the advance and charge thing. So he's a really, really powerful character. And I know one other thing that people will say is, well, what about, Blood Angels do have like sprinklings of 6-up feel no pain across some of their units, for example, Death Company. Well, once again, Black Templars can kind of copy them, because from their specific litanies that they can take, they're good because they kind of make up the fact we don't have psychers. You have a litany which is called Litany of Divine Protection. And what it does is you pick a Black Templar unit and you give it a 5+ feel no pain. So whilst Death Company, you might be able to get, a 6 at feel no pain, and that's totally fine, Black Templars can get a 5 at feel no pain. And that is important to note, because you're typically only going to see maybe one unit of Death Company in a Blood Angel army. You might see, if someone's trying to spam them, you might see 2. But basically, Black Templars can make a unit of Crusader, like a 20-man Crusader squad. They can turn them into like a pseudo Death Company unit, because guess what? We can get +1 attack from our Litany. From Fires of Devotion, we can get a 5 at Feel No Pain for the Litany of Divine Protection. We can so we're stacking all these combat abilities. We've got exploding 6s, we've got auto wound 6s. So you can turn a single unit of Crusaders into kind of like a pseudo Death Company unit, but they're cheaper. Yeah, they're not as durable. Death Company point for point probably have, more attacks, but, well, maybe not. I think they can keep up, because you pay more points for your Death Company, so you can get more Black Templars, than you can, more Crusaders than you can Death Company. It's just an interesting thing to look at. Think of all the buffs you can stack on to a Crusader squad, and you can make them into a Death Company unit. So what I'm trying to say is, Black Templars have options to mimic the Blood Angel abilities, but they also get to keep their own abilities on top of that. So they are really interesting. Sort of chapter, and like I said, the Blood Angels can definitely sort of, on the surface, look like they can out-combat the Black Templars. But the Black Templars have plenty of tricks up their sleeves. And this is why I think it should never be just auto-assume that Blood Angels are better. You should actually scratch a little bit below the surface and see what else is down there. Now, I know I've been bigging up the Black Templars a lot, and some of you are saying, well, of course you're biased, Mordian Glory, you own a Black Templar army. But what I'm trying to get across here, guys, is whilst Blood Angels immediately and obviously have got great combat potential, don't write off the Black Templars. They have plenty of ways of being able to not necessarily beat Blood Angels in the combat game, but definitely keep up with them. They're hot on their heels. They've got, they're no slouches in combat. And, evidence time and time again of this is that my Black Templar units have gone in to Blood Angel units and beaten them in combat. And Blood Angel units have gone into Black Templar units, and if they haven't wiped them out, those Black Templars have hit back and they have taken down plenty of Blood Angels with them. Now, what I want to say is, Blood Angels have, overall, more pure combat ability. I'm not going to deny that. However, I mentioned this previously, and I'm going to go into it a little bit more now. That is what they're really, really focused on. Blood Angels do one thing really, really well, which is combat. Now, the problem with that is it means they are susceptible to a couple of things. One, if they come up against an army which has got a fantastic shooting, and like Tau, who still have Overwatch abilities, then Blood Angels can really struggle. In fact, me and Johnny had to kind of be careful when we were doing battle reports of Blood Angels versus Mordian Iron Guard when we were first getting into 8th, because the Mordians had the ability to blunt the Blood Angel charges so easily with having always on 5+ Overwatch, and Tau still have that going into 9th edition. And that's the thing with Blood Angels. If they come across an army which is really good at resisting the charge or blunting the charge or just shooting them to pieces before they get there, now I know they can deep strike in and whatnot, but there is screening, then they start to suffer. And that's why near the end of 8th edition, throughout a lot of 8th edition, and this will be true going into 9th edition, Blood Angels were more often seen as an allied chapter. You know, everyone took Blood Angel Smash Captains, but no one was taking any other Blood Angel unit. But they don't do so well as a standalone force. They can still do well, the Marines at the end of the day, but they don't do as well as a standalone force simply because they don't have the versatility. They will go into combat and smash you to pieces, but if you can screen them out, you know, make them waste loads of their attacks on chaff units like Guardsmen and other Toughness 3 units, which, yeah, they're going to tear through those better than the Templars, but they have to tear through them in combat. Then they ended up being screened out, and then they get shot to pieces. Black Templars, if they, as I've said through this, they're a good combat army, but they're not totally reliant upon combat to get the job done. They've got the versatility, they've got the ability to actually, if they get into a game where they're facing someone like Imperial Guard or Tau, they can take it a little bit slower, and they can be like, okay, we don't want to get into combat straight away here. It's going to be difficult for us. What we want to do is soften the enemy up. We want to be able to actually shoot them to death a little bit before charging in and finishing them off. And that is what that's the main advantage I would say Black Templars have over Blood Angels, which is a Blood Angel player will be desperately smashing through Devastator Doctrine, Tactical Doctrine to get to the Assault Doctrine as quickly as possible. Black Templar player can be like, you know what, I'll stick in Tactical Doctrine for both turns 2 and turn 3. I'm happy to do that because my Crusaders can take a mixture of bolters and bolt pistol and chainsword. I've got plenty of shooting options because I'm rolled into the main Space Marine Codex, so I've got no issues with being able to play the shooting game. I've got Helbrecht, who's a pretty much auto-include anyway. He's giving everyone around him rerolls, and I'm going to play the shooting game for a couple of turns, and then once I've got rid of all the chaff, which I'm not as susceptible to because I'm not eagerly trying to rush into combat, then my Templars can go in there and get to the meaty units. So that is one of the things that I really love about Templars, is that you can take 5-man Crusader squads, you can give them combi plasma and a plasma gun, and then you can take take a couple of power swords and a couple of chain swords, and that is a really versatile unit because it's got the shooting ability to soften enemy units up, and then it's got the power swords and the chain swords to be like, right, I've softened the enemy up with 3 or 4 of these 5-man plasma squads, and now I'm going to finish off what I want to finish off in combat with my power swords and my chain swords. And kind of one last example I want to draw you to is in the latest battle report that I had versus my brother's Blood Angels, there was a situation where a Bile Predator outflanked using the new 9th edition rules and came on the board and sprayed into a bunch of Crusaders. Now those Crusaders were happily sat in cover and they only took 1 or 2 casualties, and then they turned round and I had 4 plasma guns and I just rinsed that Bile Predator and I just killed it. I just shredded it, and it couldn't do anything about it. I had 8 shots. I got 4 plasma guns. I had 8 shots. I think nearly all of them hit, nearly all of them wounded. I was in the Tactical Doctrine. It was turn 2 or 3. I was still happily sitting in the Tactical Doctrine, so AP -4. I just blew up the Bile Predator. Now, if I'd been a Blood Angel player, running things like intercessors. You know, Blood Angel intercessors are very good. That situation would not have occurred because the Blood Angel intercessors would have taken some damage and lost an intercessor, but then they couldn't have shot back and killed a Bile Predator. Whereas the Crusaders and the Black Templars were perfectly happy to play the shooting game for a couple of turns. And then it got to the Assault Doctrine, and the Blood Angel assault units had been screened out by things like my Scout Bikes and stuff like that. And guess what? The Black Templar Terminators went in there, and thanks to having Chaplain Grimaldus around, beat the ever-living snot out of a big 12-man Death Company unit. Because I was in the Assault Doctrine, I had exploding sixes, it's unmodified sixes to hit, give me extra hits, and they auto wound. I'm having a great time. So it's really important to understand that that Blood Angels have the pure raw combat potential. And I know I've said this a few times, so I won't repeat myself again, but they have that pure raw combat. But the Black Templars can go into any battlefield situation and know that they're not totally reliant on one strategy over another. They can play the shooting, they can play the combat, they're really good. Because what you want to kind of think about is Black Templars can shoot as good as any other Marine chapter out there. You know, they're absolutely fine with it. Yeah, Imperial Fist might get a few exploding sixes and bolt shots, but by and large, Black Templars can shoot almost as well as any Marine chapter out there. But then they also have combat at the same time. So they are probably, I would say, the most versatile chapter out there. They can do a bit of shooting, they can do a bit of combat. They truly are the jack of all trades chapter, and they won't, you know, necessarily blast people off the table anywhere near as well as, you know, Imperial Fists. Fair enough. But they can still shoot plenty of armies to death. They're Marines at the end of the day. And they may not necessarily cut the enemy to pieces as well as Blood Angels, but they can still do really well in combat. So I would actually say that Black Templars are one of the most versatile units out there, versatile chaps out there. Crusader squads perfectly exemplify this, and overall it's why they are my favourite chapter, because a lot of people see them as these berserker, zealous Crusaders that are going to charge in, and it's all about the combat, it's all about the combat, it's all about combat. Combat is very important for Black Templars, but I would always say that the Blood Angels are the Berserkers, and the Black Templars are the Honourable Knights, the stereotypical medieval knight, one-on-one duels, that kind of thing. That's what they've always been about. They're not about pure savage potential, they're about combat skill and overcoming the enemy in one-on-one mano-a-mano combat. And you know, look at the Emperor's Champion. The Emperor's Champion is such a powerful character. He's only 75 or 80 points, and he will go toe-to-toe with any Blood Angels character out there and smash the crap out of them. The Black Sword, plus rerolling all hits, rerolling all wounds, it's really good. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope I've convinced some of you that Black Templars versus Blood Angels, it's not quite as cut and dry. I would actually say that both chapters are pretty equal overall, but the Black Templars, you kind of have to put a little bit more thought into it. You've got to concentrate a little bit on stacking your buffs up and taking advantage of some of your unique and key units. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.